How's it going, everyone? Today I wanted to discuss five, one, two, three, four, five fighting game tips that I personally utilize to help me stay motivated in my grind. Number one is one that I think a lot of people take for granted, and it's to watch the game. Specifically, watching your character. The reason as to why watching the game is very important is, say you're an inexperienced player and you don't really understand how you're supposed to be approaching your character's neutral or their offense. You're just kind of flailing about. You don't really know what buttons are good or just a basic idea of how you're supposed to position yourself. Then you sit down and you watch some Blaze Blue VODs. Say you play 9 like me, and you see in the matches that you watch people pressing 5A constantly. No, they're just walking back and forth with 9. They're trying to press 5A constantly to control space. So as you're watching that, you internalize and process like, hey, this move seems to be a very good move, because when I look at how it compares to the rest of her other moves via process of elimination, I'm seeing that they're using this move way more than other moves. So that means I should try to press it a lot because it seems good. It's really important to have the basic building blocks for your approach and for your learning directly come from match videos and content. That really helps out a lot in the learning stages and helps you stay motivated. Another thing that watching matches helps you stay motivated in is, honestly, it helps a lot to see people do cool things with your character. Sometimes you just peep some tech or a mix-up or maybe a combo that just compels you to want to sit down and want to learn it, or understand how it works, understand why they specifically went for that route, things of that sort. It really does inspire you. Honestly, I firmly believe that making an effort to watch the game is a very important tool to utilize. Secondly, I think it's very important to play the game. And now this may sound like it's a given, or I'm trying to be like snarky or sarcastic or anything of that sort. I'm really not a sarcastic person. The reason as to why it's so important to play the game itself is because, alright, here's a really good example for this. There's a very popular third strike meme where it's something along the lines of, hey, why would I ever anti-air my opponent if they can just buffer air parry every single time? Now, of course you can see, if you played third strike before, that that's a very wild take, because the game does not pan out that way or does not work that way at all. There's definitely very there's definitely a lot of counterplay and a lot of options that you can utilize in order to defeat someone just buffering air parry. The reason as to why I bring up this example is because not playing the game itself, but being focused on watching the game and constantly thinking about the game, sometimes it can lead you towards this bad brain mentality where all you're doing inside your head is you're just theory fighting. You're not actually sitting down and practicing the game. And theory fighting can lead to thoughts and mindsets that are very harmful or overwhelming in the long run. When I mean theory fighting, I don't mean like, oh, let me sit down and think about how this matchup works out. Let me sit down and think about, different approaches, things to test like while I'm not at the game. I don't necessarily mean that. I think that Tekken is another game that can fall into the theory fighting loophole, because Tekken is a game that's built around action and response. And there's so many actions and so many responses that you can do to things, to the point where if you just think about literally everything that you do, everything that you can do over playing, you're just going to overwhelm yourself. Which is why I think that it's super important to just sit down and play. Play, 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 play. Play the game. Tip number 3 is something which I actually very rarely see people do. And it definitely attributes to them losing motivation or losing focus. And it's the fact that people don't ask questions. Now, this is more of a complicated topic because more experienced players have a better idea of what they're approaching right or wrong in how they play the game itself. So they're not going to be more inclined to ask questions like a more inexperienced player is. But I noticed that a lot of inexperienced players, they'll play a set, right? And not entirely know what they're doing. And as soon as the set finishes, they'll just say GG's and nothing. They won't ask people like, hey, I really don't understand what I'm doing in the game. I feel really lost right now, because I think people don't want to be the person who asks the stupid question. And to build onto this further, there actually is no such thing as a bad question when it comes to learning fighting games and approaching them. If you really want to stay motivated and stay consistent, sometimes you really have to ask a dumb question in order to get the understanding that is going to help you stay motivated, or that one tip that is going to directly change how you see the game or how you approach things. You really have to ask questions like that. And I want to express this even further and say that there seriously is no such thing as a bad question. And if you find people who are patient with the questions that you ask, please utilize that. There's a friend of mine by the name of Erin, and I've literally asked her what a fuzzy is at least 500 times. And I had to do that in order to get better at fighting games. I had to constantly ask people these questions in order to increase my understanding and comprehension. And I really hope you do the same. Tip number 4 is to mash. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? People are going to think that I am advocating for people to hit wake up buttons, always mash out of pressure, fuzzy abare. That's actually not the case. What exactly I mean by mashing is everyone has a main game or two that's their primary focus in terms of the game that they actively practice more than all of their other fighting games, the game that they put the most time into because they want to get better. Alongside those games, you really should make an effort to sit down and play things that you either don't know that well or you don't know at all. I think just mashing around in random fighting games on Fightcade, fighting games you don't even play that much. Like, I don't really play Dragon Ball that much, but I really like to just sit down and mash with friends in Dragon Ball. Mashing reminds you that fighting games are fun. Mashing reminds you that you need to stay humbled and that you're constantly in the learning phase. So I think it's a important practice to actively partake in. I'd say at least, like once or twice a week, just sit down with friends and just mash in a fighting game. I think that really helps people stay motivated because it's a refreshing change of pace. And when you go back to your main game, you're not going to feel as stressed or burnt out because you're going to try to capture that same feeling of fun that you felt when you were mashing. Tip number 5 is actually something I am going to make a more extended video about in the future. And it's the importance of consistency and focused practice. the reason as to why consistency in and of itself helps people stay motivated is when you sit down and boot up the game and you practice something new every single day, say only about 20-30 minutes a day, that's more than enough time to actively work towards your consistency. What that does is that it really makes you look forward to booting up the game. It makes you look forward to wanting to sit down and learn something new, something that will help you level up your game and help you see things differently. So to wrap up those points and go over them one more time, tip number 1, watch the game. You need to sit down and watch people play your character, understand the very basic things that they do, as well as just watch people do cool and fun things with your character. Things that you're going to want to sit down and mess around with. Number 2, play the game. Play the game. Play the game. No theory fighting for 5 hours on Discord. Play the game. Play the game. Play the game. Number 3 is to mash. You should mash with friends. You should mash in other fighting games you don't really know. Number 4, ask questions. No such thing as a bad question. If someone's patient with you, make sure you ask that question over and over until you understand it. Have them break it down for you even further. Number 5, consistency. Try to make an effort to spend 20-30 minutes a day trying to work on something that will help you improve. And yeah, that's it. Those are the 5 things that I primarily do on a daily basis, which helps me improve as a player.